This is the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. It's Tuesday, October 25th, 2022, and it is 6:02 p.m. And let's begin with the call to order by roll call. Linda Escobedo.
Present.
Mike Lawson.
Present.
Rich Feely.
Present.
Carrie LaFleur, not yet, and Keith Bergman present. So that's four of us here. We also have Concord Housing Development Corporation Chair Lee Smith. And there we have, we'll complete the roll call. Carrie LaFleur.
Here.
Here, very good. We're all here. Great. And we also have with us Lee Smith from CHDC, Liz Russ, the Regional Housing Services Office Director, and our Planning and Land Use Director, Marcia Rasmussen. So welcome all the usual suspects. Because the Housing Production Plan Steering Committee will be meeting tonight at 7 p.m., we have a hard stop of before then. Let's plan to end it a few minutes before so that we can log off this Zoom and log on to another one. Next order of business is approval of minutes. There are two sets that I have circulated. One is for September 27th, 2022, and also more recently, October 11th, 2022. And I'm saying those are, the latter are as amended because I needed to rewrite a sentence in order for it to make sense. So is there a motion perhaps to approve both sets of minutes as amended?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Rich. Is there discussion? Okay, let's take a roll call vote on that motion. Linda?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
Keith? Aye. All right, so that passes by 5-0. Next item is Christopher Heights Junction Village, a debrief on the Select Board's October 17th meeting. Status of our funds that we committed at our last meeting. And there's also an interest in discussing status of funds approved for that project by prior town meetings. And just as a quick recap, you know that the trust voted on October 4th to fund from our trust fund the sum of $1 million for Christopher Heights Junction Village for their reapplication for funding under a specific program and timeline, the DHCD High Readiness ARPA funding round, and also to request the Select Board send a letter of support to DHCD. Since the Select Board did not do that, did not send a letter of support, we need to, I think, rescind our vote, and I since our vote was conditioned on a funding round that didn't, an application that didn't go in, because it among other things, it could not go in without a support from the Select Board, who declined to do so. So that's one thing. From what I also see, the home consortium funds of $658,000. That was on the Select Board's agenda last night. I didn't stay to see the outcome, but I'm presuming that those
They were released.
funds were released. Okay, was that a vote of the board, or was that?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Okay, all right. So it was a board vote on October 24th release. Okay, very good. And also, I could see from town council's opinion letter that was in the packet for October 17th, he recited what the prior votes at town meeting were, which were totaling $2 million, which comprised of $1 million from free cash in 2017 and another $1 million in community preservation funds over a 3-year period, 350,000 one year, or for 2 years in a row, and then 300,000 in the third year. So, and I know there's been some question among our members about what the process is that by which those funds get rescinded or closed out or released, and where those funds go. And maybe we could just have a discussion about that, if anyone has, or maybe just ask Carrie, what process would you foresee in does it requires town meeting votes, future town meeting votes to release the funds, or or can the town accountant close them out or without a vote, or how does that work?
Yeah, so both in the case of free cash and CPA funding, it requires additional town meeting votes to make those funds available.
Okay. And it would it be envisioned that matter would come to the annual town meeting in April?
So the free cash piece would be annual town meeting. The CPC is attempting to get their funds available for reappropriation at the special town meeting, but I'm not convinced it's going to come together because just the way the CPA funds get closed out. I think it might have to be done at the annual meeting. We're still working on that, but it's of course complicated, as everything is.
Right. Right. And I know that from
Sorry, Keith.
Yeah, Lee, go ahead.
Could I interrupt? Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Carrie, I guess regardless of the direction this meeting goes, could we potentially ask the trust to vote provisionally if it is possible, to ask that it be put on the warrant, and if it's not possible, then so be it, but at least we've got the recommendation in place given the time frame.
For special town meeting?
Yeah.
We're running out of time.
The trust doesn't have standing to put an article on the warrant.
Yeah,
Or
so
I guess the CPC would push it, but
Well,
CPC has voted to rescind the appropriation.
yeah.
yes,
I'm presuming they
Right.
would be voting to recommend that to town meeting. And then I guess the question is, does Concord, view CPC as having standing to insert articles on the warrant?
yes.
Okay, so they could do that if they were meeting and took all the proper steps.
They
So-
have posted an agenda for tomorrow.
The draft that they are reviewing.
So it's a definite maybe.
It's
I guess all I'm saying is, whether it can ultimately happen or not, I think it's important to at least have the votes or whatever the action items might be to be in place before Friday, if it's able to go forward.
I just have a question for Liz and Russ, Liz and Lee. We clearly want that money in the Affordable Housing Trust, but with the $1 million we have back, is there anything in your pipeline that needs money in excess of that between now and April?
I think the short answer is no. We've been talking about reallocating this money for the Assabet River Bluff project. So the elements of that are pre-development, site clearing, utilities, things of that nature, the RFP process, And then ultimately, the bigger number is probably going to be what we refer to as buy down, which is effectively subsidizing the selected developer to enable them to proceed with the project and make some level of profit.
So, I mean, I would judge then that before April, with some money from us and the 50,000 you're getting from the trust in 10 days, or the foundation in 10 days, that you would have money to do anything you were in a position to do with Assabet
Yeah,
Bluff.
I'm gonna, can I
Yeah.
just say,
Liz? Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for recognizing me. So while the expenditure might not be required, in this fiscal year, getting a developer to participate with the project would require a commitment of funding before a developer would sign on, especially with the recent Junction Village. So,
They probably want cash this time.
right. So even, even if the funds were available for this purpose, even if they're not used, just like the CPA funds here for Junction Village, right? Even if they're not used, but really critical to have committed to the project for some future expenditure. So the sooner that they're available to the project, the better it is. But really, there's no developer in there, like in the pipeline, right? There's activities to do before then.
It's really what it comes down to is an acceleration of the
Yeah.
project timeline that we're trying to work on, which if it goes on the January special town meeting, especially for this reallocation of funds, it would advance it before a July 1 availability of funds for the spring town meeting.
So,
After the trust takes a vote to rescind the vote we took on October 4th, we'll be back to a balance of $1,080,000. So should that, so there'd be another ready source of funds for the CHDC to apply to without waiting for a town meeting vote. I think it would be important to have, it would be very important for the CPC and CHDC and all of us to be on the same page of what the plan is for those funds, so that we're, I know the CPC had, or the chair had indicated an openness to reopening the application process for next year's town meeting, since the total recommendations had not, or requests rather, had not reached the total available funds, CPA funds for next year. If there's been that much of a desire stated, maybe there could be just a future thought of when would additional funds be available, and what would CPC consider the sort of readiness or application that they'd want to have to be able to recommend the funds. We'd have the same question, I'm sure. So I guess the ball is in CPC's court. I'm very interested in that discussion. So we'll plan to, if they're meeting tomorrow night, plan to log on to that. Lee?
There was a discussion of a very small group of CPC and some other interested parties yesterday, where we preliminarily discussed reallocating the funds that have already been appropriated to the Junction Village project. And our purpose for appearing tonight was, I think, primarily to determine what the trust's thoughts are on allocating them to the trust for the specific purpose of dedicating them to the Assabet River Bluff project.
I think that's the simplest path forward, and I would encourage us to pursue it.
Yeah, the only thing, if you didn't in fact need $3 million to make this happen, I just would like to have language that we can go on to the next project, but I don't have, I certainly agree that we want to capture that money for Assabet Bluffs and other projects.
So are you talking about the total of $2 million, Lee? From
It's-
the total that
It's,
town meeting is?
I think yesterday in the context of the CPC discussion, it was well, the number is fluctuating, but somewhere between 900 and $1 million that had been previously appropriated for Assabet River, for Junction Village to be repurposed for Assabet River. And that's separate and aside. So the idea would be that the CPC would make those funds available to your trust. And then once we're ready to go, we can make specific requests for funding as the project evolves.
So I'm, let me be sure I'm hearing. So the proposal is that the CPC transfer those funds into the appropriate, have those funds be appropriated into the trust?
Correct.
For the trust to dispense at a later point?
Correct.
And would they be earmarked for a particular project?
So,
We discussed it being earmarked for Assabet River Bluff. There's a few moving pieces in that there's some money that was, I think, dedicated towards the open space piece of the project that at the moment is proposed to be excluded from the request for the transfer. And then there's another slug of money that roughly $43,000, give or take, that CHDC's position is that we should leave that appropriated to the Junction Village property. So if and when we want to resume redevelopment of that property, we've got some pre-planning money available to use.
Yeah. If they're okay with that, that's, more power to them, because that's certainly what we hope is the next step of Linda.
so, having done quite a bit of work with CPC over the years, I would just say that the normal process is that the committee routinely or as needed reviews the closeout of projects that should have finished by now, or in this case, are not going to happen. And that once they make those decisions, the funds are reappropriated to the CPC fund for their use. So that's the normal process that happens. So I'm a little surprised to hear about it being directed to the trust at this point.
I think it's consistent with that approach, Linda. It's just accelerated in that, maybe technically, and maybe this is a town council question, but they maybe technically they'd go back into the CPC coffers, but then immediately directed to the trust coffers. So in other words, the CPC has expressed desire in reallocating the Junction Village funds to the Assabet River project.
And they would see this, they would see the trust as a vehicle that could assist in the
Right.
acceleration of the project. Yeah.
And maybe one of the biggest logistical points of that is when CHDC is ready to ask for those funds, we could just go directly to the trust without necessarily certainly having to go to town meeting, but I guess it remains an open question as to whether we involve the select board.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to go. I don't think we want to be constrained by a CPC schedule when you guys can move. So therefore, I would say, because particularly since we're not buying property, the trust could move subsidy and pre-planning money quite quickly without waiting for the CPC town meeting cycle.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting discussion that we're having here. I, for one, am fine if any, of the trust being a vehicle to receive funds that have been previously set aside for housing, and just, hey, give them to us, we'll hold them, so that they don't, so that they don't go fund something else other than housing. But I guess we'll see if all the pieces necessary to do that can fall into place.
Well, I would just suggest, Keith, that you reach out to Diane Proctor and perhaps have a chat with her. I don't know the formal process, whether
Yeah.
it takes a town vote to rescind the allocation. that
Yes, it
CPC
does. Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll then probably take a second town vote to reallocate the funds.
Yeah, I would think, yes, I would think you could probably do them both in the same article, but you'd have to, town meeting would have to do it.
Yeah, and I have the same kind of question for Carrie. Carrie, the town meeting will rescind the funds that were from free cash, is that correct?
Yes,
And then could there be a similar request that those funds be reallocated to the trust?
yes. But that, I think we're intending to do that at annual town meeting
Yeah, sure.
versus special town meeting. And again, the CPC article, we're just trying to understand legally if this action can happen at this time or if it needs to wait to annual town meeting. There's some reference in the enabling legislation that talks about these activities happening at annual town meeting. Yeah.
Well, I think with the action that we'll take a little bit later, I guess, to actually rescind our $1 million support for the Junction Village project, we would then have $1 million that we could allocate in support of Assabet River if some planning requirements came up before annual town meeting, but it seems improbable that that project would require $1 million before annual town meeting, just in timing.
I think it's probably the easiest mechanically if the CHDC just come back to the trust for that $1 million without any other parties, without certainly in due course have CPC take the votes it needs to, have town meeting take the votes that they need to, but between now and annual town meeting, we've got
We still have funds available. Yeah.
we've got $1 million. Yeah.
I think it's unlikely that we'd need to spend more than $1 million before July 1st, but
Great. Yeah.
if there's also some, in my personal opinion, some momentum at the moment with respect to the recent termination of Junction Village, and if there's a way to do it, strike while the iron's hot, in my view.
Yeah, I'd say that ball's in the CPC's court, and if they want to have
Sure.
their funds, be reused right away, hey, we're happy to cooperate with that. It sounds like the free cash from the town, though, is going to take a longer route. I guess what I'd also want to mention is that, all right, so that if the $1 million in free cash for Junction Village ends up being, a funding source for the trust by the time the annual town meeting happens, there's $1 million. I don't know if that's going to be viewed as, well, that's what we get. We don't need to make another request, because I was thinking that we ought to at least at some point tonight, we ought to make a request for funding for fiscal 24. And if the powers that be say, all right, well, fine, you can have this released funds from Junction Village as we'll put those in the trust fund. That's fine. I think we should make a request, and I don't know, and this would go for the CHDC as well as us, that since the selectmen's procedure for use of ARPA funds is to have those requests considered as part of the normal annual operating and capital budget processes, essentially, so that there isn't an express lane that you can stand in to say, hey, I want ARPA funds. It's like you stand in the regular line, along with everyone else who's seeking funding. So, but it would seem like that I don't know if that means that ARPA funds would be part of the mix of monies that that might be used to fund housing projects or not come annual town meeting, or maybe it's too soon to tell.
Yeah, I think it's a little too soon to tell. We
Yeah.
should just take that up as it comes our way.
Yeah. So
If I could,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry,
Lee.
could I just add? So technically speaking, the CPC's application deadline has passed. So I think it's worth a conversation with Diane or other members of the CPC and anybody else who's got thoughts on it, just to think about logistically. Perhaps it's not a formal application per se, but maybe just a letter or something like that. I don't really know, just sitting here at the moment, but this falls into kind of a different category. So
Yeah,
in
I
terms
think
of the money
that
that,
from what I
because
recall,
it's already
Diane,
been appropriated.
yeah, I think from what I recall from, that may or may not be. If it were me, I wouldn't let you have it without an application. And
They're not going to take an application.
well, but that's specifically what Diane
Yeah,
inquired about, inquired of the Community Preservation Coalition, as far as I know. Was there anything preventing the Concord CPC from reopening applications
Okay.
because you didn't spend it all? And the answer they got back, well, of course not. And
Yeah.
no one
Okay,
else,
I hadn't heard
I
that.
don't know of anyone else that sets a drop dead deadline and doesn't allow you to tap into CPA funds if an opportunity comes up before a town meeting. So
Okay.
that may be the Concord
I
way.
hadn't heard that.
Yeah, so again, that's an important part of this discussion that CPC is going to have tomorrow night, I guess, is to find out about the mechanics of how that might work. And if,
Yep.
and maybe that flexibility will be to the benefit of our projects. So,
I heard nothing but support, though, from the CPC folks to move the money from Junction Village to the trust for the purposes of the Assabet
Right.
River Bluff project. So
yes, I heard the same. So Keith, are you interested in a motion to rescind our allocation?
yeah, yes, and I have, let me just, I did draft one, and let me just share with you what it might read. It would be move that the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Board of Trustees vote to rescind its commitment of $1 million for the Christopher Heights Junction Village project's reapplication for funding from the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development under DHCD's High Readiness ARPA funding round. That is what I don't, that's all I came up with. If you want to say more about why in the motion, but
I would simply say something to the effect, with a preference in the use of those funds for expenditures by CHDC, which would accelerate the timetable of Assabet Bluff.
yeah, I wouldn't vote for that.
Yeah,
I prefer we take them separately.
Okay,
Yeah, let's have a clean vote to rescind the commitment. I guess my only thought was I didn't know if anyone would feel compelled to editorialize
I
about
would.
why we're doing this.
I would add language indicating that because the select board failed to support the project.
Okay, I've said, since the lack of support by the select board provided or prevented any such application from being considered by DHCD.
So moved.
Okay,
second,
by Mike, second by Rich. Is there further discussion on that motion? All right, let's take a roll call vote. Linda,
Aye.
Mike,
I,
Rich,
aye,
Carrie,
I,
and Keith, aye. So that is 5-0. Approved unanimous vote. Very good. Any other votes that we need to tonight on this. I will reach out to Diane Proctor. Maybe she'll be at the live in-person chairs breakfast at the townhouse tomorrow morning. I don't know. I saw Matt Johnson today live and in person at the DEI commission meeting and remarked that I'm going to see Matt in person 3 days in a row this week. So, Lee.
It's my understanding that the warrant closes on Friday. As you said, CPC is meeting tomorrow to discuss this
12:30,
warrant
yeah.
article.
Yep.
I think it would be helpful if they had an indication of the trust's position on whether to, in fact, seek to redirect the allocation of the Junction Village funds specifically to the Assabet River Bluff project.
Any thoughts on that?
Which I might be able to qualify by saying I don't know that that vote needs to be the trust's vote to in fact give the money to CHDC for that
Right.
project, but just the reallocation.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point. And rather than say we're going to take a consensus and then report it without actually taking a vote on something, we're not the finance committee, so we're not going to do that. But we could take a vote but I'd be in favor of us taking a vote to express to the CPC our support for the procedure they may wish to follow of having funds released CPA funds be deposited in the trust fund. I mean, we should at least say we're good with that procedure.
And
For the
some indication of support for the Assabet, the use
Yeah,
of the funds for the
yeah,
Assabet River project, as it might come in as
Yeah,
a formal request.
right, to facilitate the release of Junction Village funds for Assabet River Bluff, the trust.
And maybe further to support this warrant article going on the special town meeting warrant.
Well, once it goes on the warrant, I'd support it, but I think I'd want to see what it
Yeah, I
says.
wanna see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, so the motion, how about this? The motion would be to express to the CPC the trust's support for a procedure which the CPC might pursue to release Junction Village funds for the Assabet River Bluff project. What about, how does that sound?
You want to add to the trust for the Assabet River project?
To the trust, yeah, I guess we've got to figure out is like that earmarked for the trust fund. I got real problems though, us committing funds without an application.
Yeah.
I don't mind being the repository of the released funds.
Yeah,
I have a problem.
I tried to make that point that this isn't also a commitment to actually dole out the funds based on a specific application, but just that you're willing to accept the funds for the use of the project, subject to our subsequent application.
My only concern is if you could bring the rest of Assabet Bluff in under 2 million, are we locking because we've already spent $1 million for the land in the 2 existing units. Are we locking ourselves into this, or can we use that money for other things?
Well, I would say that, obviously the whole thing is subject to our CHDC's cost estimating process, and as we evolve through the project, you know, to the extent that for whatever reason we didn't need as much as is available, or if for some unfortunate reason it didn't move forward, then, you know, I think we'd support yet another reallocation of the funds, or, you know, whether it's just back to the general trust account or whatever the case may be. But I, you know, when we discussed it yesterday with the CPC folks, I thought it was important to specify that the intent is to move the funds from the Junction Village project to the Assabet River project,
Right.
however that may happen
Right.
mechanically.
Well, that could be affected just by having, you know, one CPC article, you know, pot to another and not involving us. I mean, if it involves us, I
Except
think.
that
our-
I think
Yeah,
that may be a timing issue. I think once it's in the trust, we could ask you the next day for some or
Yeah.
all of it. But if it's still within the custody and control of the CPC, you know, we may be waiting till July 1 and et cetera.
I don't see why you would, because it's not new fiscal year money. It's old.
Right.
It's old money. It's a special town meeting. So nothing at special town meeting has to wait for July 1st.
Or maybe the broader question is, does the town want your trust to be the holder of the purse strings for affordable housing, or do we want CPC to effectively be the holder and decider?
Yeah, I mean, that's a bigger discussion. I got to say that
That was the whole purpose of the trust, was to get money into the trust so we could act when we had an opportunity, as opposed to wait for annual allocation of funds through CPC.
yeah.
Yep.
And if the CPC wanted to release Junction Village funds to the trust, period, I'm much more comfortable with that, because then that allows the trust to actually require the CHDC submit an application for us when we're, because I don't know what form that's going to take. Maybe it's a, you know, I imagine it would be another a mortgage.
Well, the motion could say something like, we support the CPC's intention to transfer the funds from the Junction Village project to the trust in support of Concord's affordable housing goals, including the Assabet River Bluff project. So I think if we, some kind of almost weasel language there, but Keith.
Yeah, that might get us past tomorrow, but I'd be very concerned that it's not, you know, town meeting is going to vote something. And if CPC makes the recommendation to town meeting that the funds be used for Assabet River Bluff, then they are. I don't know that the CPC can do any more than give us the money without, I don't think they can dictate what we would spend it on.
Well, I think there has to be some kind of application for this. My understanding, so we would have to be relatively clear in the application what the intention was for the use of the funds. We just can't say, give us money. I don't think.
I had made the point in speaking with them yesterday that I thought it was important to be explicit that the redirection of the funds would be explicitly for the Assabet River Bluff project. You know, I'm fine with your application process once we want to actually ask for a distribution of the funds. But
Yeah, I guess I'm not familiar where town meeting has earmarked funds for a trust for a particular purpose.
Yeah, I'm not sure why why CPC wouldn't just transfer it to its own project for the Assabet Bluff.
Oh.
If it wanted to be that specific. I mean, I was on that call yesterday, so I do know that Diane expressed an interest that these funds be used for the Assabet Bluff project. But I don't know I don't know why, thinking about it now, why, if they wanted to direct them, why they wouldn't just direct them to another one of their own project accounts.
Or frankly, if they want it to be exclusively used for Assabet River, why don't they just give it to Lee?
Right, even easier.
That did come up, but I was overruled.
Okay, any votes, any thoughts?
Well,
I don't
can I
know.
just ask,
Yeah.
you know, obviously this is happening very quickly. There's a lot of different moving pieces. Does the trust, let's just assume it shook out that CPC wanted to direct the Junction Village funds to your trust. Is there any objection to that?
No,
No.
no objection, none.
No objection. The objection just comes with their strings attached to a particular project, I think, without any kind of an application. I think that's the objection Keith is making, and I would support that.
Is that the application from CHDC that you're referring to or something different?
Yeah. Your application, if we have the money,
Yeah.
your application to us.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And if we're only talking $1 million from CPC, I'm more comfortable with that, because I'm still hoping we do this for less than 2. So, you know, if we're just talking $1 million from CPC, I'm fairly
Yeah,
comfortable.
the other piece to keep in mind is between now and the January special town meeting, we're optimistic that we can have harder estimates to show what we would be asking to use the money for. We don't have those today, but you know, certainly in advance of the special town meeting.
Very good. Is there a motion anyone would like to make to report to CPC tomorrow that the trust would support being the recipient of the closed out Junction Village CPA funds? Should the CPC so desire?
Yeah, I
If
can
that-
support that.
if that's in the form of a motion, I
Yeah.
would move it.
Second,
Okay,
I mean,
motion by
I
Mike.
agree with Michael, we need an application, but I think we don't need to put that in the motion.
Yeah, and my motion doesn't say Assabet River Bluff.
I'm willing for the $1 million to dedicate it to Assabet River Bluff. My concern would be the second $1 million that's sitting out there.
Yeah. I think if the CPC wants to spend it on Assabet River Bluff, they ought to keep it. I don't.
Better give it to Lee.
Yeah, right. Well, vote, yeah, keep it in their own accounts. Recommend to town meeting that the funds be awarded to CHDC. We don't have an application. I don't know what it's going to be used for, so it's too soon to ask. It's too soon to ask me to approve it. We've got $1 million, and whenever you're ready, come on back with an application, and we've got.
I mean, CHDC would happily accept the reallocation to CHDC from CPC. I'm fine with that. I think Carrie helped me out. Was there some discussion of maybe the timing of that? But I thought about it a little more, and I think because it's already been appropriated, I don't know that it would need to wait until July 1.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember too. I don't remember a discussion about the timing. Maybe there was a thought that the trust could be more flexible. I don't know. Marcia, were you there?
Yes, I was,
Yeah.
and I think it had to do with there's specific language about some transfer of funds to an affordable housing trust. And so the question was, we have an affordable housing trust. We also have the Housing Development Corporation, which would be the better vehicle to go with. And so that's why I think the focus had been on the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. And Clifford, the senior planner who was working on that, is the one who identified the language and why we were focused on that conversation or issue.
I mean,
Yeah,
there
and
wasn't
I'm just-
there, oh,
I was going to say, I'm just not familiar with, and I'm all in favor of the CPC designating, the trust as a recipient of funds. I'm just not familiar with the procedure where it's earmarked for a particular purpose, for a particular project, or can be.
wasn't there a little bit of a discussion about going forward that the CPC affordable housing funds should just be dedicated to the trust? Now that we have the trust up and running, or did I just imagine that? I think there was a little bit of discussion about that.
There was.
Yeah.
I mean, and
I always thought the basic idea was that once the trust was established, it would effectively be the bank, if you will, for affordable housing projects.
It had to do with undesignated funds for affordable housing could be directly allocated to an affordable housing trust.
The undesignated, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
But they're presently designated, and they've got the opportunity at special town meeting or annual to change the designation
to undesignate them if they like.
and redesignate them.
Yeah, I'm just not familiar where a CPC has given, CPCs fund trusts everywhere else, I think, in all of the communities. But and then they are put into the trust fund for the trust to administer. And then report back to the CPC how that's been.
Yeah. I think the intent was just for CPC to indicate its interest in specifying that the redesignated funds be used specifically for the Assabet River Bluff project, just so that in the future there was no uncertainty about that.
Well, moving it in.
Which I think, I mean, worst case scenario, Keith.
Keeping it in their own
Worst case
accounts does
scenario.
that too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with CPC giving it to CHDC. I was gonna say, worst case scenario, if you end up with the funds and CHDC presents an application that your board's not comfortable with, it doesn't move forward, they may still be designated for that project, but it doesn't mean they're distributed.
Yeah, I don't know how we untie up. So $1 million is going to get tied up, requiring another vote at town meeting at some point to untie it because the application doesn't satisfy the trust. That sounds pretty unworkable.
All right, well then give it to us. I'm fine with that.
Well, or we'll take it without the earmark.
Well, I'm not worried about
That's a conversation to have with the CPC, just explaining this to them.
Yeah.
That if they want to designate it as earmarked funds for a project, then they should be given to the CHDC. If they want to give it to the Affordable Housing Trust in support of Concord's affordable housing goals, fine, we'd be happy to receive it. And just let them decide.
Just by way of brief background, if you weren't in attendance, and I wasn't, but I heard about it subsequently at the CPC meeting last week, we kind of had a debrief about the Junction Village project. And then once I and Liz were off, someone suggested that this whole idea of putting it on the special town meeting warrant to accelerate the Assabet River Bluff project for the reallocation happen, and that's how this started. So I mean, it's certainly, from all indications that I've heard, it's been their intent that it's specified for this project. If your trust is not comfortable with that kind of specificity, again, I'm happy for CHDC to take it.
just that it's
Well,
clear.
I mean, with the, if there was,
Procedural, this
it
is a
sounds like there was a discussion involving the future of of the trust that we weren't part of.
Yeah,
That's today.
So
Yeah, so
I don't know, I don't know what
I
to
can't
say.
speak,
I can say
I-
we've got very few minutes before it's 7 o'clock. I
So I'm back to my opening comment, which is that the normal process for CPC is to review the projects that are ready to be closed out. And in this case, the Junction Village project will be considered in several different components for that purpose. And then what that means is that those funds then go back into their regular CPC funds to allocate as they see fit. And that may be the cleanest way to go, unless there's something I'm not.
those funds won't be lost because they won't be, no one's going to use them for a non-CPA fund because the CPC has them and their corporate memory will remember what they were used for, and town meeting will never get a crack at those funds without a recommendation to CPC. That's a little different, say, than the $1 million in free cash, which I suppose if it's might be spent on anything. And if the decision is to have it come to the trust, that's great. We'll be very happy with that. Do we, I'm not sensing that we're in agreement on what representation we'll make or would make at a CPC meeting tomorrow night when they'll be discussing things we haven't been a party to. So I'm happy to go to the meeting as others can, hear what they have to say, not deliberate or speak on their behalf, but at least be aware of their conversation.
would it be possible, just given the timing and the warrant closes on Friday, to position it, notwithstanding open meeting law notice requirements, as a joint meeting? So you're able.
No, we don't.
I mean,
know.
I can say in good faith that we didn't know until the last 20 minutes that that would be required in terms of kind of a emergency type of notice, but certainly still an open meeting.
No, we're at today's, what day of the week is this?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday. All right, well, soonest we could put the soonest we can do, if anyone cares to, is we could post a meeting for Friday morning where the warrant closes at 12:30. I think we're driving to Provincetown on Friday morning though, but if we, I would be willing to have us meet at the earliest possible hour, whenever we can get to the town clerk to post a meeting tomorrow. I guess at 8:30 is that when it opens. If in order for us to be able to react to whatever it is the CPC does on Wednesday night. How about that?
Could I just ask a clarifying question? Keith, are you saying basically that you're uncomfortable with if the CPC wanted to transfer $1 million, give or take, to your trust, that you're just not comfortable today with the specificity that it be dedicated to the Assabet River Bluff project? Is that the issue?
Yes. That's the issue for me, because I don't know, what do we do if I don't know, something happens and there's some other disappointment, we all quit in a huff, and then there's $1 million sitting in the trust fund, can be used for a project that no one's proceeding with.
I agree with Keith. I mean, especially we're a brand new trust, we really haven't had many transactions, and to allocate $1 million to a project that we haven't even seen a proposal for, I think is just, just not well advised. And if they want to do it to the Assabet River project, which I'm all in favor of,
Yeah.
give it to Lee. And be done with it. So I think that's the conversation tomorrow, if we can attend the CPC meeting. Look, if you want to insist that it be dedicated to the Assabet River project and nobody's objecting to that, then give it to the CHDC. Instead, if you want it to support affordable housing goals in Concord, which could include the Assabet River project, then we'd be happy as a trust to receive the funds.
I have to go. All right, I'll see
Hey,
you.
we'll see you on the other side, Liz. Thank you. All right, so it doesn't sound like we're getting any
I
further.
think we have a motion on the table, don't we?
Well, my motion was for the trust to indicate to the CPC that the trust would be supportive of receiving the decommitted funds for Junction Village for affordable housing purposes.
Let's vote on that one.
I
Okay.
second that.
Okay, I had a motion, motion by Mike, second by Rich. Let's take a vote. Linda?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
And Keith, aye. All right, that's a 5-0 vote. And that's important. I feel good about that vote because that's the way I feel about what our relationship with CPC should be someday. That if they want to give us money, that we will gladly take it for affordable housing. All right, thank you. We are.
Does anyone know what time the CPC meeting is tomorrow?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, okay. Very good, thank you.
All right, I'll plan to be there. Thank you for
Thanks.
your time and your support. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Sorry about all the bumps in the road here today, but we're all.
No, it's
all in the
there's
same
a
direction.
lot of logistics. Yep.
Right,
No, we'll figure it out.
the moving target. Yeah, thank you.
Look forward to working with you. Okay, thanks.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Very quickly, the housing, just other items on the agenda. Housing production plan. The reason we're cutting off our meeting is that the steering committee will be meeting at 7 o'clock to continue to review draft chapters. There will be a public forum scheduled for some time yet to be determined in mid-November before the plan goes to the select board. I want to report for the record on this meeting that under funding sources for the trust that the select board did vote last night to insert on the warrant for the January special town meeting as we requested the refiling of the real estate transfer fee and building permit surcharge home rule petitions with language that we had proposed. And I appreciate that very much. It's great to get that vote. The select board did ask that we prepare updated revenue projections on both of those sources. And I know that Rich has been working on that. And the finance committee will hold a public hearing on Thursday, November 17th at 7 p.m. on the articles in the warrant, presumably the financial articles. So we will be preparing for that.
So Keith, if I may interrupt, I thought we were going to talk about proofing the language tonight for those warrant articles.
Well, let's see, what we can do is, yeah, what we've been asked to provide, and I don't, it's now after 7, I'm not sure we'll be able to get to it tonight, is the explanatory, as far as I'm concerned, the language of the articles as we submitted is correct. What's needed, I guess, is an updated explanation of what do they mean.
So I had a couple, yeah.
Yeah.
I had couple edits for the narrative in addition to some suggestions for what should go in the boxes. And the select board is going to need that no later than 12 o'clock on Friday.
They put the narratives in the warrant.
We do, but we don't vote the narratives.
Yeah.
So I think as long as the warrant article language is set, that's fine. And
Yeah,
then
the
we have
warrant
another.
article language is correct. And with there was one change that I had responded back to Chris
So-
Carmody, but
So we're not consistent about including in the title. You made some edits in terms of, you know, the 150, up to 150% and some other items that you included, but the language is not consistent. The refile is not consistent with using transfer fee. So, you know, the title says transfer tax, but then in the body, it uses fee and sometimes it uses tax. And I think it's being referred to at the state level as a transfer fee.
Yes, it
Right.
is. Yeah, so
So
I guess I mean, we don't, I don't know what to say.
And
I mean,
also,
we're just the volunteers. And there's paid staff and town council working on this, and I don't know why we're called upon to do their job.
Well, I think, remember, the warrant is not the motion that shows up at town meeting. So the warrant is a way to indicate in general what the motion is about. So I think if there's some specific language corrections, Linda, can't they be cleared up when you actually get to the motion?
in this case, I think it's going to the use of language here in terms of what people read in that warrant, I think is material.
What are you looking at in particular, Linda?
Again, the use of the title of the transfer, instead of tax, transfer fee, and then being,
I see. All right, I got you. Yeah, that's wrong.
and then being consistent with that language in the narrative itself, which it is not.
Yeah, the title, it's not, it says tax, that's wrong. That should be changed. Real estate transfer fee is what it says in the text of the article.
Yeah, well, except that needs to be also proof, so it's consistent. So I guess.
Well, I don't view the text of the explanation as being part of the article.
No, but it's in the body of the text.
Where?
Sorry,
I
I'm
only
gonna,
see it in the title, and like Article 3, for example, I see the word
yeah, it's definitely,
tax in the title. It should be fee.
yeah. It's definitely in the box. And then I think it's one other place. I'm sorry, I don't,
Yeah, look, the other one. Yeah, I guess with all due respect to the boxes here, that I hope that town staff is capable of editing that stuff because we're just volunteers. And I'm late for another meeting and I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Or who would like to chair this meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second to adjourn. It is 7:05. Is there, let's do a roll call. Linda,
I.
Mike,
You were muted, Mike.
Aye.
Rich,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Keith, aye. So 5-0, we are adjourned at 7:06. Sorry, we didn't have more time. Thank you.